This week, we watched the 1997 critically panned Kevin Costner directed film titled The Postman. And along the way, we asked ourselves, is this film another means of torture? Should this film have been titled Dirt World? This is Force Fed Sci-Fi.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is sure to be another thrilling, death-defying, although maybe nap-inducing episode of the Force Fed Sci-Fi podcast. It was exhausting watching The Postman.
So exhausting. Oh.
A 3-hour-long snooze fest that had little to no sci-fi elements in it.
None.
Despite all of the billing that we got it for being a science fiction film.
It was a big lie. It was huge.
It was a lie.
Well, that's why we put it on this list. We thought it was sci-fi.
Yeah.
The book's all about sci-fi.
Before we get into disemboweling this film,
Disemboweling?
here is a quick breakdown of the plot. Now, mind you, this film came out in 1997, so it is past our 5-year statute of limitations on spoilers. So we start off, the film starts off in 2013. And boy, were their predictions off about what 2013 were going to look like.
I don't know if anything is correct.
Mm-hmm. Nothing is correct. And this is a 2013 where wars and plagues have left the United States without infrastructure, technology, or government, and it's all militias and nomads just roaming the country.
And the occasional lion.
Apparently.
Yes.
And a lone wanderer, played by Kevin Costner, becomes the savior of a people longing for hope. So on paper, this sounds like a really good movie. This is 1997. This is Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
A few years removed from doing Dances with Wolves, which at the time when that came out, that was a big time movie.
It was huge. Everyone loved it.
I loved that movie. I thought for sure that afterwards Kevin Costner could do no wrong. He was the it's hard to think of the 90s without thinking of Kevin Costner.
Yes. JFK. That was phenomenal.
In between doing this film and Dances with Wolves, he did do JFK, did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which is not a great movie, but I don't know anybody who doesn't say they're not entertained by it, at least a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Did The Bodyguard, which gave us that classic Whitney Houston song, I will always love you.
Wow.
I can't do a Whitney Houston. Please don't ask me to imitate her.
Wow, that was beautiful.
No, it wasn't. You'll never see me do Whitney Houston karaoke anytime soon. He did Wyatt Earp, which I feel like he mostly did because he couldn't get into Kurt Russell's Tombstone, and he just wanted to do his own Wyatt Earp movie. Tombstone is the superior.
Is it? I've never
Wyatt
seen
Earp
that
film. You haven't seen Tombstone?
I saw the opening credit, the opening scene, but I fell asleep.
All right, that is our non-sci-fi movie wreck of the week.
Already?
People.
That's the one?
Tombstone.
What?
Tombstone. Oh yeah. They also did Waterworld, which is on the list, and hopefully we'll get to in a future episode. As Sean alluded to, this movie should have just been called Dirt World.
It's so bad.
Made on a big old budget, which we'll get to in a moment. So he did Waterworld, and he also did Tin Cup, which is the sports movie, romantic comedy, all kind of rolled into one.
Wow. A couple winners there,
yeah,
man.
Kevin Costner likes his sports films, and I think he just wanted to cross a golf film off his list.
It's a golf film?
It's a golf film.
Oh, my gosh. That's terrible.
Well,
at
now
least
you know.
At least Bagger Vance was a decent golf film, but okay. And then he directed this, The Postman.
Though the case can easily be made that things started to go wrong for Kevin Costner after releasing this film. Because on paper, this should have been really good. He got top talent with the script writing. Eric Roth and Brian Helgeland. It's originally based on a book by David Brin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And both of the screenwriters actually have really good credits. Eric Roth wrote Forrest Gump, The Insider, Ali, and Munich. These are all great
solid
movies.
Films.
And Brian Helgeland, he's not without his great credits too. He's got an Oscar for L.A. Confidential. He did Payback with Mel Gibson. He wrote Mystic River. I enjoy all of those films. The music was composed by James Newton Howard, which is another Hollywood legend, starring Kevin Costner as the Postman, which we get no other name for him.
Nothing.
Throughout this 180-minute long snooze fest. At least in the original book, we got a name for this guy, and Kevin Costner just takes it over.
He's just the postman. And we have Will Patton in the film as General Bethlehem.
Yeah, and the rest of the cast is kind of rounded out with a lot of bit actors. Olivia Williams as Abby. Hard to find her in reasonable IMDb credits.
She was in like The Sixth Sense
after
this, and then that's like the last thing I've seen her in.
And also we have another rock star cameo following Back to the Future, which, if I have to admit it, Back to the Future did their rock star cameo a whole lot better. We have Tom Petty in this movie as the Bridge City Mayor.
I liked it. I liked his cameo.
You may have liked it. I didn't. I just thought it was a bit gratuitous to throw in Kevin Costner's favorite rock star into it.
Oh, see, I didn't know it was his
I'm assuming
rock star.
Tom Petty is Kevin Costner's favorite rock star because there's no other reason for Tom Petty to be in this movie.
This dude just like worshipped himself this entire film.
Mm-hmm. On paper, like we said, this should have been a good movie. It was based off a very popular science fiction novel from the mid-'80s, but with that being said, I think it's important to talk about some of the differences that we found out between the book and the film. And I think this is actually the first movie we're covering that was originally based on a book.
Yeah.
I do believe that's the case. So we were finally having a discussion about when there's a movie approaching that's originally based on a book. So the original book was written by David Brin, as we mentioned, and the book features electromagnetic pulses, bioweapons. There is an artificial intelligence that's running an entire state at one point.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to see that film.
I would too. But Kevin Costner saw all those elements and was like, no, I want to make a Western.
He loves Westerns. He's really good at Westerns. But why?
This movie is not a Western. Even if you take out all the science fiction elements, it's not a Western.
He tried to make it a Western, but it's not.
It really isn't. More of a story of a con man who just fell into an old mail sack and is just delivering it to random old people across the country just to stay alive and get a random meal every now and then.
Exactly.
Kevin Costner, you disappoint us.
I don't know.
Well, he does a good movie every now and then he does something like this where it's like, man, you were right there at the top, and then he just brought us back down.
Exactly.
So this originally was not supposed to be a Kevin Costner directed film.
No, it was not.
This was originally set with Ron Howard to direct and Tom Hanks to star. So we get a
Tom Hanks?
I think Tom Hanks may have just been attached to it because he was looking for something different to do, which I don't blame him.
Yeah.
But we get our second appearance from Ron Howard in this show as a potential director, which leads to the question,
once again,
do you think this movie would be different with Ron Howard directing it?
Yeah, because it wouldn't be like completely owned by Kevin Costner.
Yeah, it wouldn't be 3 hours long.
You would definitely have other people chiming in, whereas him, he would just be like, this scene's great.
Ron Howard would have brought in a solid editing team and just said, no, I don't want to do that.
Definitely.
And supposedly David Brin was actually happy with the screenplay.
He was happy with the screenplay.
Yeah. I would have been a bit more disappointed in one of them to actually put in some of the things that made my novel so great instead of trying to turn this into, post-apocalyptic Wyatt Earp.
Well, maybe the screenplay was written very well, but not the movie itself.
Not the movie
He didn't
itself.
enjoy the film. He enjoyed the screenplay.
Well, to be honest, there weren't a ton of production notes floating around on the internets for me to find. I mean, every now and then, there was this stuff about Dirt World, and at one point a visual effects designer was fired like 2 weeks into production.
Really?
As far as controversy goes, there wasn't much surrounding the film.
No toxic fandom.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Well, actually, I saw online a bunch of people are enjoying this film now.
Nowadays, yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes, they gave it like a 9% off of, I think it was like 34 reviewers.
Well, you know my feelings about Rotten Tomatoes.
I do. Whereas the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, I think, gave it almost like a 50. And it was like a couple thousand that watched the film.
Well, sometimes the audience gets it right.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is the case of that. If you're looking at it just from the fact that I want to turn off my brain and watch a Kevin Costner movie, it's like, okay, by all means, this is for you, and then follow it up with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah, if you're a big Kevin Costner fan.
But this was made on a budget of $80 million.
Which is just, you can see it throughout the film, like the great location shots, the sets. I mean,
this is a very expensive film to look at.
Super expensive, but it's good. Like everything, the location is phenomenal.
And because I'm a fan of inflation calculators, if this movie was made now, it would cost $125 million to make.
Holy cow!
So let's start discussing. First thing I want to talk about this 3 hour runtime.
3 hours, yes.
3 hours long. It is literally a slugfest to get through this movie, and it's clearly divided into 3 acts. We have the first act where he's captured by the Holnists, and then he escapes.
The Holnist.
Yeah, he escapes, becomes the postman / con man.
Yep.
And then in Act 3, he becomes the revolutionary leader, all the while still not knowing his real name.
No, you never get the name. So annoying.
Dances with Wolves, I can understand that being 4 hours long, but Kevin Costner finds himself in these unnecessarily long movies more often than not.
He does.
I mean, JFK was a long movie. Wyatt Earp was a long movie. Waterworld got up there a little bit. 13 Days was a bit longer than it should have been. And then Man of Steel as well.
Yeah.
And he's not in Man of Steel a ton.
No.
But his scenes are the best in that movie. I wanted more Kevin Costner in Man of Steel. But we're not talking about that movie today, unfortunately.
I need more Kevin Costner.
That would have been what cured Man of Steel.
Kevin Costner.
But with Phantom Menace, I brought up the point that there is a good movie somewhere within Phantom Menace. If you edit down and you bring in a script doctor, but that's not the case with The Postman. There isn't a good movie no matter how much you trim out or how much you rework the dialogue. This is still not a good movie on paper.
Well, I think it's like the climax kills the film. And
There's so much that kills the film leading up to the climax, though.
I mean, I enjoyed the first half where he's captured by the clan, the Holnist.
Yeah, but
I thought those scenes were great. They were
was
interesting.
great, but it could have been a lot shorter. It didn't have to be
Totally.
It didn't have to be 45 minutes
I know.
of a 3-hour-long
It was
movie.
a long time.
If this was an hour 40 film and that first act was maybe 35 minutes, and even that's a bit much, it still would have been much better than the first act we got. And this,
well, it took forever. It took him 49 minutes to become the postman.
and this first act is crammed with red shirts that just die with no service to the story, period.
Bethlehem just destroys anyone.
Yeah.
He just kills them all.
Well, there's Bill the Mule.
Yes.
That's just killed unceremoniously and then put into a gruel.
Yeah, they put it. Oh, I was so mad.
Which we get no emotional reaction from KC.
No, Casey.
After seeing his buddy the mule is killed.
He just looks at it and is like, meh.
And then he just gives it to somebody else in the jail cell. He's like, here, you eat my friend and be okay with it. Or there's Woody. He helps Kevin Costner escape in that end of the first act. He throws a knife into Idaho's arm. And then also Idaho is the red shirt who gets eaten by the lens flare.
Yes.
Or at least my lens flare. He gets eaten by the lion.
He does.
What's up with this lion that just shows up?
Yeah, it's in the beginning of the scene, the beginning of the film, and then it just appears again.
It's a very weak pretext to get the prisoners out of the compound. Like, hey, we're going on a lion hunt. Like,
yeah.
Really? You couldn't say, like, we're going out for a deer or a moose hunt and there just happens to be a lion
Well,
out
wasn't
here?
it like the lion killed one of the guys and they're like, you have to kill the lion and
Like,
bring
you
the
gotta
guy
bring
back.
the body back and kill the lion. Like, why? There's a lion out there. I'm not going out there.
Oh, yeah, and Giovanni Ribisi is in this.
Ribisi.
Ribisi is in this. He has
There you go.
Bandit 20.
Yeah, they don't even give
They
him the
didn't even give
courtesy
him
of
the
giving
name.
him a name like Paul or something.
But I hated his teeth.
Yeah, I didn't like him.
He did good. He did a great job.
So Idaho eaten by the lion, Giovanni Ribisi getting stabbed, Woody getting shot to death, and Bill the Mule being Hannibal Lectered into a gruel.
Yes. Well, for when they joined the Holnist, I was like, is this the KKK? Because they made some racist comments.
Mm-hmm.
And but once Woody showed up, I'm like, oh, JK, he's black. But it was weird because at the beginning of the film, when they're like, Bethlehem comes to this town, he's like going through all the people to basically indoctrinate into this Holnist. He like says no to an Asian guy. He's like turning random people away. So I'm like, all right, is this white supremacy?
A lot of the background of the movie kind of gets lost, and I don't know if this is the fault of the screenwriters or Kevin Costner, but
yeah,
the gist I got from Nathan Holm was that he was this like self-help quote-unquote therapist who wrote a couple of mediocre books, and then people took those to heart.
Okay.
Because you see Bethlehem really kind of quoting Nathan Holm to heart and holding him up as one of the heroes of his life.
He did.
And yet this is a man who can quote Shakespeare, who's, well, he's not Bob Ross talented at painting, but he still paints. He has his hobbies.
He did.
So this is a guy who, yeah, he should be likable, but he's not, because he's that one friend we have who's always quoting those self-help books thinking that they'll actually do him any good.
Well, he's quoting the wrong passages.
He's quoting the wrong. He's pick and choosing what he wants to hear and adopt for his life policies.
Yeah, like they're quoting Shakespeare, and he's like, "Cry havoc." It's like, what?
Well, how do we even know that Bethlehem is his real name? Because we don't get Kevin Costner's real name.
No.
Lorenz Tate's character changed his name. We know Abby's name. We know Michael's name. We don't know a ton of characters' real names. Sheriff Briscoe, for all we know, that's like his last name.
Yeah.
And for all we know, that could be the previous sheriff of the town, too. So we don't get a ton of confirmed characters or even characters that we even like much in this movie.
No, there's very few.
Bethlehem is totally an unlikable villain.
Yeah. At the beginning, I enjoyed his character. Like, I even took notes, and you can just, like, see it in my notes as it transitions to, ooh, the villain's interesting. He's doing wrong. He has all these, like, scum, but he's also very educated. But then as it goes down, I'm like, this guy's just a douche.
Yeah, the best villains have some type of redeemable quality, or they do something redeemable for the audience to like them. Like,
he just, like, starts killing random people. Just
exactly.
being crazy.
And he carries around this sword, and he's slashing people in the neck and trying to cut out the tongue of his lieutenant.
Yeah, he's just like, I was there when the White House burned down. He just thinks he's a god.
I want a better written character of Bethlehem where he's somewhat likable and maybe idealistic, and then along the way he gets down into the dark hole of his life and becomes the evil person that we see in The Postman. So if there is a good movie anywhere, it's in the fact that there could be a potential decent prequel from this.
Totally. I enjoyed hearing about, like, because they talk about their jobs they did before, like, the apocalypse happened. And that was kind of cool. He's like, I think General Bethlehem said he sold printers.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's kind of cool. You get to see what they did prior.
This movie's a lot like Game of Thrones, where the best part of the show, or everything that led up to the show, all happened 30 years before the show took place. Like, all the interesting parts of all the conflicts of the characters we're seeing now happened way before the show even took place. And this movie is clearly set in a post-apocalyptic America where there's no government, there's no technology, there's no infrastructure, and yet we get zero explanation as to what exactly happened.
Nothing.
We see some brief scenes where Kevin Costner is testing water for pollutions or anything. But with post-apocalyptic films, we get some type of title card or explanation at the beginning of the film that explains how we got to where we are. Like, we got that with 12 Monkeys. We kind of got that with Mad Max, Resident Evil. So we see this, but we don't get this in this movie. So right away as an audience, we're confused as to what the heck is going on here.
All you get is, like, from the letters and, like, random mumblings, throwaway lines. They're like, the weather got really bad. The landscape started to change, but there's like nothing. There's no science experiment gone wrong. Nothing.
Yeah.
It was very annoying.
This movie is it's a thinly veiled political criticism. When when Kevin Costner's character, he's not quite the postman yet. I mean, at this stage of the movie, I would call him the con man.
Yes.
And then he becomes a postman / con man.
He couldn't figure out what he was.
But then when he gets to Pineview and he has to kind of BS his way into this town by saying the president is Richard Starkey, who, if you know your musical history, you know that's Ringo Starr.
Yeah. I did not catch that.
Yeah. And the only thing that Kevin Costner mentions in terms of legislation is the Bolin Act, BOLIN. Did you look up anything that may have been close to that?
No.
Well, I did. The only thing I could dig up remotely relating to that is the Boland Act.
Okay.
BOLAND.
I thought it was
which actually aimed to limit U.S. government assistance to the Contras in Nicaragua. That was the only thing I could find that remotely resembled that. But even then, that wasn't far away from the timeline of this movie. So if this movie wasn't set in 2013 and may have been set in like 2063 or something, I could have found it to be a bit more plausible.
Yeah, I figured it was all just throwaway junk. But that's kind of cool. There was something kind of similar to that.
Yeah, Richard Starkey / Ringo Starr as a president, and apparently they're set up in the Metrodome.
Yeah. I enjoyed the Tang reference he made. I was like, wow, this film's dated.
Well, I think the case can be made that this isn't so much a science fiction, but more like a political science fiction.
A political science fiction? Throw the politics at me. I'm
curious.
Where?
Well, there's no government. So there's already that So in place of, without a democratic government, I mean, it's hard to theorize what would rise up in place. But I think this movie kind of gives us a good predictor, or it is a solid prediction of what we could see in a potential post-government collapse where the country isn't run so much by one central figure, but there's a group of militias that kind of control regions.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
It's people. Like, we vie for that type of leadership.
Yeah, and without technology or infrastructure, we'll definitely be going back to more of an agrarian society.
Oh, yeah, strong survive.
I don't know if there will be much of an emphasis on knowledge or knowledge retention in a post-government world.
It would be tough.
It would be tough. I mean, when the heaters go out, the first thing people raid for warmth is the libraries.
Exactly. So
we could see like all those collections of those David Brin books just be burned.
How ironic.
I mean, there's no Democrats, there's no Republican.
No, there's none.
I mean, which I'm on board for that.
Yeah.
I'm on board for no political parties.
Do you think you could survive in a world like this, Chris?
You know, it's tough to say.
Okay.
Because a world like this is unpredictable.
It is very unpredictable. It's like,
I mean, assuming all
man.
the infrastructures have collapsed, I mean, we're seeing lions run around the freaking wilderness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for all I know, like, there's an eagle that just swoops down and pecks out my eyeballs because, like, hey, look, I haven't eaten in a while. Or there's a cougar that just comes get me, or, you know, I wander into a swamp where an alligator shouldn't be, and then, oh, look, there's an alligator, and just chomp.
Yeah.
In a post-apocalyptic world, I mean, it's hard to predict where you'll end up.
Yes.
I mean, you have to have a certain set of rules, and we kind of see that with Kevin Costner and the little characterization we get from his character. Like, I know the rule, and rule number one is avoid civilization, and the one time he breaks his rule, you know, he gets captured by the Holnist.
Because he does, like, the play. He's doing, like, Shakespeare with Bill the Mule.
Yeah.
He was a great con man. I enjoyed con man, Casey.
Well, he was a con man in the entire movie.
He was. He just kept flip-flopping. He's like, I want to be a postman. And then people start dying, and he's like, I don't want to be a postman anymore.
I don't want to be a revolutionary.
It's just like, what? You were so fine killing off all the general's men, just like blowing them away. But the one kid dies, and then it's like the end of the world.
No, that raises a good question, too. I mean, if you want to become a revolutionary,
this can be lives.
Yeah, you gotta be willing to get your hands dirty, and you have to recognize some people that will die around you.
I actually really enjoyed that theme in this film, where they talked about that, like, if you want to change, death comes with change. Like, you can't avoid it. There's going to be a cost. That was really cool. It stopped me for a second.
It's like, true with any political revolution that there are going to be some bodies along the way.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the swearing in scene where he's just basically reading the wall.
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome. I didn't like the sperm donor scene. That was a little weird.
Yeah, things got awkward pretty quick in Pineview there. Like, Abby just comes up to it and is like, have you had the bad bumps? Like, okay, like, what's going on here? And then she asks him, like, put a baby at me. Like,
yeah.
And he does, at first he's doing the right thing, but like, I'm going to go.
Right. I was like, oh, sweet. He does have morals and ethics for some, like, you know.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it with a stranger. Who would have thought that a con man had, you know,
well,
who knew that would be the line with a con man?
So that's what I mean. It was like weird because you think he would, but then he does. Anyway, she shows up in
more like she sneaks into his room and then he just like, well, you're naked, so may as well. But he's found out pretty quick by the sheriff in Pineview, and
I like the sheriff.
Everybody they're giving him baths, they're giving him food, and then that Irene March, the blind woman, she has an overshare with her sister, and she gives him an envelope with the blank address. Like, how am I supposed to know how to find her?
I saw that.
It's like he's the quote-unquote postman, not, Houdini.
I know.
He's not Harry Potter. He can just pull out an address from nowhere.
Just travel all over the world.
And then he goes back. And then also, too, I mean, in Pineview, we kind of get our only death that serves the story in some way.
Yes.
Abby's husband, Michael, is killed by General Bethlehem. And in a movie that's filled with red shirts going down left and right, Michael and Bill the Mule are really the only two deaths where we feel anything in this movie for any of the characters. We get that crappy little epilogue at the end of the movie where the postman has died and he gets a statue of himself. And even then, we don't know his name on that plaque.
No, they put the postman.
It's like you'd think somebody would have figured out his name 30 years down the road.
It was too important. Rebuilding society.
There was so much of this movie in the third act that was corny.
Oh my gosh. Corn City. I have to say, that was probably, I don't know, this is the first time we've ever reviewed a film where you see a slow motion action scene of guys rolling on the ground. Like it was
a movie
so,
that's not,
God, what a horrible climax. That I hated the
I
climax.
think the overuse of
So mad.
slow motion, I think that was producer Jeremy's lens flare.
And we had our first montage in this film.
We got our montage where they're
delivering the mail, and then
who would have thought delivering the mail would turn out to be so cool? It's proof that any scene could look cool if you edit it like a montage.
Exactly. I've been waiting for a montage in one of these films. So, yay. Did you like Tom Petty? He like makes him, what does he do? He like puts him on like a crane.
He is the mayor of Bridge City, and he puts him on that
like it's like a zip line.
Yeah, it's like a basket zip line. And it's like, man, it's quick this way. I go on it just for fun.
Oh, but that scene was not quick. It was like in a minute and a half of just him smiling. They're like they had to put like a fan where his hair's blowing
Kevin
back.
Costner reads Shakespeare probably the worst of any actor alive.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's right. He has
that
Shakespeare.
He has the Band of Brothers line from Henry. I think it's Henry V as he's going down that zip line.
That was so bad.
It's like he could have read that with a little bit of passion, because this is meant to be the scene where he's rallying his troops for the final battle.
It's like a camera just staring into him, and he's just like looking out, the hair blowing in the wind, reading Shakespeare. And
he has that flat affect when he's doing Shakespeare, and you can't do that when you're reading Shakespeare. You have to read it. You have to have comprehension of what you're saying, and I don't think Kevin Costner does.
Well, this was probably at the end, like of the editing process. He's like, crap, I'll just throw in Shakespeare.
Yeah,
so
it's like he didn't know how to.
It's like when Harrison Ford did the overdubs of Blade Runner. So one of the cuts they had him like do like epilogues and prologues into the beginning and end. So he would do like these overdubs, and they're so bad because he didn't want to come in and read them.
Yeah, the narration of this film is
so
definitely
bad.
like that too, especially
So
at the
bad.
beginning where it turns out it's his daughter that's narrating the film.
Yeah.
Daughter named Hope, which is
Hope.
the corniest
Oh
name
my
of any
gosh.
woman in a post-apocalyptic movie.
I couldn't believe it. But by then my jaw was still on the ground from that scene of like the end battle. I couldn't believe it. Oh yeah, and they rebuilt society in 30 years.
Yeah, I don't think this movie should have been focused around Kevin Costner's character.
No.
I would have rather have seen a movie where Abby is the main character.
Yeah.
Because Abby is straight gangster in this movie.
She
I mean, they're starving, and Kevin Costner's complaining about the food. And what does she do? She takes the horse outside and shoots
Bam.
it so they can have a decent meal, and mostly so she can shut him up. But even when they're stuck in the woods, he tries blaming her for the situation, apparently without any recognition of the crap she just went through after being taken prisoner by Bethlehem for God knows how long, because this movie is terrible at letting us know how much time has passed.
There is no time in this film. Like he gets shot, then all of a sudden it's snowing, and then they're in a cabin, and we have no idea.
Yeah.
She's apparently pregnant.
Yeah, the best scene with Abby in this movie also didn't have to be in the movie, which does Abby's character a major disservice. Because she is one of the best parts of this movie, but she has to work with what she's being given with Kevin Costner, which isn't much.
Not at all. His lines are so awful.
Well, it's not so much his lines are bad, it's just how he reads them too. Like,
It's
you're
terrible.
weird.
I know. Yeah, like that. Once again, there's like throwaway lines where he's just like, you're weird. Or like Bethlehem, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Also, the resistance fighting is another thing that bothered me, because we don't get that until the third act of the film.
Yeah.
And we don't see that like we see in other films like Red Dawn.
Okay. I've never seen Red Dawn.
Well, that's your mistake. I don't know what you've been doing for years, but I mean, if you're crazy for Patrick Swayze, then that has to be on your list.
Red Dawn.
Uh-huh.
Patrick Swayze's in that?
Patrick Swayze and a very young pre-cocaine problem Charlie Sheen. But we don't get a ton of that in this film, and I feel like that would have helped us connect with the younger bit players, is if we had more of the fighting, and if we see more of them dying in unfortunate ways. I mean, granted, it is terrible to see that in a movie like this, but it would have helped us connect with the characters a bit more.
Exactly.
Because we don't get that at any point.
We don't. He just shows up at the post office. Hey, I'm here. I made all this.
Hey, I want to fight.
Yeah. And that's it. The worshipping of his character. I hated him and Abby was just so bad. Such a forced romance.
If the movie was about her,
So
and
much
he was more of a secondary character, it maybe would have been better.
Yeah.
But then you have to shoehorn that love scene with her and Kevin Costner, and I don't think he knows how to either partake or direct in love scenes.
Oh,
period.
so bad. Oh, the way she like sneaks up into his bedroom.
Yeah,
that was so bad.
And then he's dancing with her in the town square where he just has that stupid smirk on his face.
Yeah.
Anytime, like
what?
Okay, there's only one movie where the Kevin Costner smirk worked, and that was Bull Durham, and it does not work in this movie at all.
No more smirks.
Do not smirk, because when he smirks, like, and he's got like the wrinkles and stuff going on, it does not look good.
Hashtag no smirk.
Hashtag no smirk. Let's get that go. Let's make that be a thing.
Yeah, that was just so bad. His joking scene. You used to love when you thought I was funny. It's like, oh, dude.
You never were.
No, you weren't funny at all.
Where was the smart aleck teenager who yells from the
Yes!
background? You never were funny.
No, because they were worshiping him like a god.
The only sidekick that we get is Ford Lincoln Mercury, and he does nothing but kind of, brown noses to him the entire film. And he goes behind his back and disobeys orders so many times.
He does.
He gets himself captured, and he gets that postal carrier from California. He gets him red-shirted, too.
Yeah, the guy just dies,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, because he was the guy initially that was passed by General Bethlehem's army. They wouldn't accept him because he's Asian. So he becomes a postman. It's like, sweet. And they just kills him.
So this is all leading up to the climax of the quote-unquote climax, because it's not much of one.
It is not.
Well, neither of them are armies. They're more two militias just riding out into a field to meet each other.
They even had guys like up in the corner. So there were horses, a couple guys that climbed up on like the hills. You could see out of the corner of your eye. I'm like, wow, they actually had extras up there.
There was a ton of extras in that.
So many.
I mean, that's
props to that.
Props to that for having as many real extras as they could to see, because nowadays it's all like computer graphics.
CGI, man.
So in terms of production design, cinematography, this movie does deserve props.
Top notch.
As well as the score for the film. Although there were times where I felt that James Newton Howard's score was a bit out of place. Like if this was done in service of a Western, for instance, that would have been better. But again, this leads us back to our argument of Kevin Costner trying to make a Western and not a science fiction film.
And he tried. He really tried to make this into a Western, because the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, he's trying. He feels like a Western in some regards, but it's bad Western.
It's clearly a case of him trying too hard.
Yes. Totally.
He's trying to make
Well, it was fresh off of Dances with Wolves. This was his second film they directed.
Yeah.
So he's like, I get it. They gave him all this money. They're like, make another Oscar film.
And it clearly wasn't.
No.
But this final battle, I mean, it just sort of happens.
It doesn't.
We get a quick Shakespeare monologue, and everybody just knows where to show up. And we don't even get much of a fight. They jump off each other on horseback. And in the most awkward slow motion fight in the history of film, they're literally just rolling around in the mud.
Rolling. And then General Bethlehem chokes out KC, and he says, I'm better than you.
Lots of shoving, lots of grimacing, lots of slow motion.
And then, the fist pounding, or the face punching scene.
Yeah, it is so unsatisfying to watch this fight.
And it pans to the crowd. Like, that was my lens flare, dude. I'm like, come on, why? The scene is awful. We don't need it.
No, there could have been a better climax.
Yeah.
Like, you have these two militias meeting in a field and we don't get any big fight.
Nothing.
I wanted the big fight. You're gonna ride these two militias out in the middle of nowhere. They're not gonna fight.
They didn't even kill Ford, because he captures Ford, Bethlehem, and then he's like about to kill him.
Well, his plan was to use him as a bargaining chip as soon as he figured out who he was.
Which is awesome. I was like, sweet. This would be great. Some emotion. Maybe I'll get emotionally involved. Maybe he'll kill Ford and Casey will just lead a charge.
But at the end, I mean, Bethlehem gets his shot in through he's shot through the chest by his colonel who doesn't speak because Bethlehem cut out his tongue and castrated him.
That's right. So that was the guy.
Yeah. So how Kevin Costner was able to challenge him is because since he was indoctrinated into the Holnist, he had that brand and he had that right to challenge the leadership of the Klan. And the colonel was the last guy who tried to do so and lost. And
I think that climax just is a perfect case of like when you adapt a book to like a film, you can take some elements out of it, but you have to change some to films. Like you can't, like I'm sure in the book, this was great. You know, like, oh, I challenge, you know, because you have that investment into the characters and you know all the parameters. But this, for an audience,
as an audience, you're
$1 million budget film, you can't.
As an audience, you're just counting down to when Bethlehem gets killed because you don't like him.
The whole time he's just killing Postman, killing everyone. He's like, I'm going to take over the world. It's my world.
But then right after this, obviously, we have the epilogue where, personally, I thought the movie could have just ended on him holding his baby.
Yeah.
And that would have been it.
Fine.
We don't need this stupid statue scene at the end of the movie.
He was alluding to his Oscar that he thought he was going to win.
Roger Ebert, I think, said it best when he said he went from Dances with Wolves to Dancing with Myself.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he built a statue of himself in this movie. And it's the corniest epilogue I think I've seen in any movie. Because the little boy that he rode up to in slow motion and took the letter out of his hand, that's now the man who's standing in front of the statue going, that was me. Like, you just happened to be at this dedication of the Postman statue.
Because they told him, they're like,
you're not dead from all the biological agents that are still hanging around in the air, apparently.
Right.
And they rebuilt the country in a
30 years.
Yeah, miraculously short period of time.
They have planes, cameras, television. Like, they're literally reporters there, vehicles. Like, they just build it all back up.
In such a short amount of time, too.
I would like to see that film. I would like to see that.
How they rebuilt it?
Yeah. I mean, maybe because technology is different, especially nowadays, you could have like a bounce back pretty quick. But I don't know, man.
Did this movie really need an epilogue, though?
No, it did not. It was not needed.
No, there's so much of this movie that wasn't needed.
I didn't have questions when I was over. Wow, what happened? No, not at all. It was very lousy, and it left me very angry. But not as angry as Phantom Menace. But I was still
I think you brought it up off air that you enjoyed this movie more than the Phantom Menace.
But I didn't enjoy it at all. I enjoyed it more than Phantom if I could enjoy Phantom.
You know, I enjoyed Phantom more than this movie.
That's okay.
Now that we've kind of critique the movie enough, let's move quickly into the legacy of this.
The Razzies.
Yeah.
Razzies.
To say this movie tanked would be an understatement.
It swept the Razzies.
It grossed $17.6 million against that $80 million budget. So that is
inflation would be like, what, 30 million nowadays?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
When you can't even make up a fourth of your budget, that's not good. You're not going to do well. And critics lambasted it for bogus sentimentality, which I have to agree with them.
Oh, they hated
Siskel and Ebert, when they were still a team, they gave this movie 2 thumbs down. Roger Ebert, in a later review, gave it 1.5 stars. And as we mentioned during the top of the show, it currently holds a 9% rating on Rotten Tomatoes for whatever that's worth. No Oscar wins or nominations, which was a huge shocker.
It did get a couple Saturns.
Couple of Saturns, but that's more of like fan voting.
Oh,
it's like you can put whatever weight on those you want, but they don't really mean anything in the long run. I mean, neither do Oscars.
No, not really, especially now.
But it did sweep the Razzies, we mentioned.
It swept them.
Worst actor, worst director, worst picture, worst screenplay, and worst original song for, quote, the entire song selection.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, this movie did not do well. So, with all of that in mind, what do you think went wrong with this movie?
Everything. The pacing. I think the pacing and editing was so lousy.
The pacing was very similar to The Phantom Menace.
They needed to chop up this film. They didn't need the first half. We did not need to take 49 minutes for him to become the Postman.
Well, could this also be remade or rebooted, do you think, within the next few years?
I think it could be, definitely. If you rebooted this film into like an indie sci-fi film, totally. Mm-hmm. That'd be nice. $20 million budget, throw in some sci-fi elements, practical effects.
I want to see the prequel solid. Where Bethlehem became Bethlehem.
That would be solid too.
Like seeing on The Walking Dead how Negan became Negan.
Mm-hmm.
Is on paper, Bethlehem is an interesting villain.
Very
but because he's written poorly within the limits of this movie, we don't like him. He was apparently before all this, he was a peon in the copy machine sales world. He, had a affinity for Shakespeare. He had painting as a hobby. So on paper, he is interesting, but we we just don't like him in this movie.
And Will Patton did a great job acting with it.
Will Patton is a treasure.
I haven't seen many of his films, actually.
He was in the original Punisher with Thomas Jane. He's been on. He's mostly known as a bit actor. He doesn't really do anything major. But I enjoy him in just about everything I see.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen him in Remember the Titans and Armageddon, and then I think that's it.
Man,
that I've only seen him.
You gotta up your Will Patton intake. Those are some rookie numbers there.
Oh, and Brooklyn's Finest.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's well, I love Ethan Hawke, so it's an Ethan Hawke Wesley Snipes film.
I guess it's over the moon for you. All right. So do you think this movie holds up though? I mean, we are about 22 years removed from it, and there's been a lot of chatter on the internets about how people are kind of retroactively thinking that this is a good movie. Are you in that camp?
It's like the prequels, man. They now think it's like a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes instead of a 9. I think I don't think it's a 9. I've seen Battlefield Earth. That definitely is a 0. I've seen the
Well, yeah, if you hold that coveted 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Like I've seen direct to DVD type films, like Nicolas Cage ones in the Fast 10. Those definitely are like, sub 20, percent. But this, I would say it's a solid like 30.
And I think that leads us right into our rating for the movie. So on this show, we have a 4-tiered rating system. We have a wouldn't watch category. We have a would watch, would own, and would host viewing parties. Now, for me, after viewing this movie, I had to come up with a special category just for this.
Yes.
This movie is too long.
It's an hour.
It's an hour and 30 minutes longer than it should be.
Yeah.
There's next to no sci-fi elements in it. Kevin Costner was clearly not the right person to direct, let alone star in it.
Or produce.
Yeah, we don't care about these characters because we hardly know them. I would have to deem this as a would erase from my memory category. I want this out of my head. I don't ever want to think about this movie again. If somebody suggests, hey, do you want to watch The Postman? I want to be able to say, no, I don't know what that is.
I'm sorry. What? The what?
The what? What are you talking about? Kevin Costner? Yeah, I know him. I just don't know that movie. I want to be able to say that.
We don't talk about The Postman.
Yeah.
I want to feel about this film how I feel about Phantom Menace. And I think I do. I never want to see this again.
This is a would not watch for you?
This is I would burn the copies in Walmart. If I see, I would commit arson.
For you, once was
arson,
enough.
Yes.
You would commit arson.
For this film.
I think we're both kind of in that category of would erase from our memory deal then, if that's the case.
I'm good. I never want to see that. I will remember that climax. I mean, I've never seen
a worse climax in a movie?
I will remember that for next time. If I ever see something that's like horrible, we'll be like, no. I've seen something worse. Let me take you on a journey, young man.
I'm sure there are worse films than this, but for the sake of this podcast, we have not watched a worse one yet, I don't think.
This is too long.
We just went from The Phantom Menace to Attack the Block,
which is great.
And now this. So unfortunately for Attack the Block, it gets Oreo'd between these two not so great movies.
Yeah.
But
let's hope the next one's better.
Yeah, leading into that, we're going to enlist the help of our friendly random number generator AI, Major Samantha, to pick between our list of movies between 1 and 118. And beep, bop, a doop, a deep. And she has selected number 95. It is a 2008 British film directed by Neil Marshall.
Another British
starring
film.
Rona Mitra and Malcolm McDowell. It is Doomsday.
Doomsday.
We get another post-apocalyptic film. This time we actually get a clear explanation of what exactly led to the downfall of society. That'll be our movie for next week. We'll be looking forward to watching that. So in addition to watching and reviewing Doomsday next week, we have a very special treat for the Force Fed Sci-Fi podcast. Sean and I will be discussing in a full-length episode Men in Black.
Yes. We're coming at you, Men in Black style.
Ahead of the new release of Men in Black International. So be on the lookout for that one. And if you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. It helps drive us up the charts as well as help people like you find the show. We are across the spectrum of social media with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's all at Force Fed Sci-Fi. You can check out and download episodes at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find podcasts. And please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Finally, you can check out our website, forcefedsci-fi.com, for show notes and links to all of our social media. So for myself and Sean Culp, we will see you next time. Force Fed Sci-Fi is written and hosted by Sean Culp and Chris Rupp. Website design, associate producer, and editing by Jeremy Keski. Artwork designed by Mike Berger. Theme music composed and performed by Custom Anthem.